Hey, what's up guys? So recently I was thinking about the whole 1D&D thing that WotC's trying to push, and I have some concerns about it that I kind of wanted to express, so I want to make a video talking about them, and perhaps start a discussion regarding this D&D Dilemma, which we'll get into. So this upcoming new D&D 5.5, or 1D&D, or whatever you want to call it, is set to be released sometime later this year, and the community has already noticed that some changes that they plan to implement look fairly similar to some Pathfinder features and mechanics. Additionally, the lead designers for D&D have noted in their fireside chats that they're going to be rewriting the books to make them more clear in their wording and hopefully get rid of all that classic D&D vagueness that some of us have come to hate about the game system. Which I honestly think is pretty cool because D&D definitely needed some love and attention for some of its wording for spells and features and things like that, and if they manage to take some rules that are similar to Pathfinder mechanics and it makes D&D a better game system because of it, then why not? But recently, I've been getting some really exciting third-party content for D&D 5e, and even backing some popular D&D 5e and Pathfinder compatible Kickstarters. And that's when I began thinking about these things that I'm calling the D&D Dilemma. Will all of these third-party supplements that are currently being released or being designed for the current version of D&D 5e truly be compatible with the new version of D&D 5e, or be barely compatible at all? And if 1D&D turns out to be a great game system, should the community forgive WotC for what they did with the OGL crisis and move on, or continue to boycott D&D products? Because as far as we know, this new version of D&D, which technically isn't a new version I guess, will include a lot of major changes to just about every aspect of the game. And in D&D's most recent fireside chat video with Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, the lead designer for D&D, they said this:
even though the core game is solid and compatible with the adventures people already have from the past 10 years, every page of the book is different from, the equivalent page of the 2014 Player's Handbook. And that's true for all three of the revised core rulebooks.
And WotC have gone on record by saying that the new version will likely be the last major edition of the fantasy RPG, leading me and many others to worry that if it is such a big change, will our third-party books even still work despite them saying that they will? And while I personally never really bought any third-party material for older versions of popular game systems like D&D 4th edition or Pathfinder 1st edition, this will be the first time in my life at least that all of my third-party books, adventures, and so forth for one of my favorite game systems could become obsolete because it would be too much of a hassle to translate the old D&D terminology, mechanics, and DCs to the new version of 5e that will be coming out later this year. And you might be typing away in the comments right now or thinking, Nate, you don't have to use the new version of D&D if you don't want to, just use the old version. And trust me, I know. But if 1D&D is a good game system and is a major improvement over the old game system's rules, mechanics, and wording and things like that, then why would I stick with the old version when I could just upgrade to the new version and not have to worry about that stuff anymore? Plus, as I'm sure you game masters out there can relate to, I already put a lot of time into prepping my campaigns, and I don't want to have to spend dozens of more hours trying to translate the DCs and mechanics of my favorite third-party books to 1D&D, if I decide to use it, that is. And while WotC have said that 1D&D material will be backwards compatible with this new version of 5e, I don't know if I really trust them when they say compatible. And on the 1D&D Q&A forum, they explain what they mean by backwards compatible, but I can't help but feel a little skeptical about this considering how much they're changing about the game system. So like for example, Pathfinder 2nd edition is compatible with Pathfinder 1st edition, technically. But if you were to talk to someone who has used both those game systems extensively, they would most likely recommend to just stick with one game system over the other, because if you were to use material and adventures from both the different game systems, the terminology and rules and mechanics and DCs would get kind of confusing, especially between classes, if that makes sense. And what could be really frustrating and annoying is if they release some more playtest material or details about 1D&D and it reveals that the game master will have to put in a lot of work if they want to use their old D&D books that were released by WotC or use their favorite third-party books, which would kind of fit with WotC's favorite pastime of putting a lot of work on the game master's plate. And something else that I'm worried about, which I talked about in this video briefly, is WotC releasing this new version of D&D and then crossing their arms and saying, oh, so this new version of D&D is compatible with old D&D material and versions, and it does work with them, and you can use them with a new version of D&D if you want to. Oh, but that would take a lot of effort on your part, wouldn't it? You don't want to have to spend all that time and headache stressing about rules and compatibility, do you? Well, if you don't want to do that, then you should just rebuy all the books again by purchasing our 1 D&D edition value pack, priced at only $5.99.99. And the sad thing about this is, it doesn't sound unrealistic. Like, looking back at WotC's track record, I could imagine them trying to do this. But let me know what you guys think in the comments, but I feel like there's this small sense of paranoia in certain parts of the D&D community right now, because we're all holding on to our official D&D books and third-party material and waiting to see if the WotC boogeyman comes busting down our doors and tells us that these books are no longer compatible. But one thing that I thought about that could kind of be a bright side to this new 1 D&D is if it does truly become a similar game system to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, then the material from both 1 D&D and Pathfinder 2nd Edition could theoretically be easily compatible with one another, which would be pretty cool. That is, of course, if you would even want to transfer some of your material from Pathfinder to 1 D&D or vice versa. And something else that I kind of want to touch on and would love to hear your guys' experience with as well is that in recent years, I feel like I've only really bought third-party D&D material even before the OGL crisis. I did buy Fizban's Treasury of Dragons back in 2021 because a special edition cover was amazing, but since then, I don't think I've bought any of WotC's newer material because my main group switched to Pathfinder, but even before that, when we were using D&D as our main game system, I found that my group honestly enjoyed third-party adventures and material more than some of the official adventures that were released by D&D or WotC. And to kind of put on my tinfoil hat here for a second, I almost wonder if the reason why WotC is trying to change D&D so much is partly because the lead designers want to make it a better game system by changing the wording and adding in new mechanics and things like that because it's their passion, and partly because Hasbro is trying to increase their profits as much as possible and is trying to incentivize everybody to rebuy the books and so forth, because it would be way too much effort for the average D&D enjoyer to translate all of the old material to the new rule set, if that makes sense. I don't know. Just an interesting thought. Additionally, this could cause a lot of people who currently have third-party material for D&D to move into the walled garden of 1 D&D, which we know that Hasbro and WotC are trying to create, especially after the OGL crisis. But obviously, the simplest solution to all of this is to just ignore this new version of D&D and use the old rules, but as I'm sure many of you can also agree with, I'm still really curious to see how this new version of D&D will turn out, and if our old D&D books will truly be compatible with a new version, like WotC and D&D have promised multiple times by this point. And I don't know if you guys have actually messed around with the 1 D&D playtest at all or anything like that, but there are actually some really cool features and mechanics for classes and things like that that they're trying to implement, and while some of them are unbalanced in my humble opinion, what's really cool is that they're asking for community feedback and then implementing that feedback. Additionally, after the OGL crisis, I was one of the people who decided to boycott WotC because of how betrayed I felt. But in all honesty, after watching them try to make amends and trying to be more involved with the community by providing a lot of playtest material and asking for feedback and releasing videos talking about the feedback and upcoming changes, I can't help but appreciate what they're trying to do. Plus, when you see the love and passion that Chris and Jeremy have for the game and they're wanting to see it succeed, I can't help but want to support these guys, which just adds to the D&D dilemma. Because while D&D's reputation may have been left scarred after the OGL fiasco, the people who were designing the game weren't a part of that. And it still holds a special place in my heart, as I'm sure it probably does for many of you listening right now, for being the game that introduced me to the wonderful world of TTRPGs. And I would be lying if I said that I wasn't going to be trying out 1 D&D once it's officially released, of course, and making a video about it, letting you guys know if it's truly what it was promised to be, and if it's even a good game system or not. But with everything that I've covered in this video regarding this D&D dilemma, let me know what you guys think. Do you also find it really difficult to not support D&D when you see all of these really passionate people behind the wheel and driving D&D into the future? Or do you perhaps think that they're going to go back on their word and make old 5e material and third-party material much more difficult to use with this new version of D&D? I'm really curious to hear what you guys think in the comments. But with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing, because it lets YouTube know and other people know that my videos are enjoyable. But anyways, everybody, I hope to see you in the next video. Take it easy. Bye-bye.